Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Hannah? Nobody wants. Alan? That the regular meeting of the Council of the Township of Springwater of September 6, 2017 come to order at 6:30 p.m. All those in favor? Carried. I'd ask everyone if you're able to stand for the national anthem and then remain standing.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Please remain standing for a brief moment of private reflection or prayer. Please be seated. And I'll turn to councilors. Anybody got a disclosure of pecuniary interest on any of the matters that's on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none. We don't have any deputations, and so we'll look at previous minutes. And can I have a mover and a seconder to get it on the table? Hannah? Alan? Is there any of these minutes you want to discuss? So that the minutes of council items 6.2 through to 6.7 be approved as presented. All those in favor? Carried. So now we have question period. If anybody in the audience has a question about something on the agenda, we'd be quite happy to address it. Even if it's not on the agenda, we will try and get back to you later. Come forward, your name and address.
My name is Roy Monk. I'm here representing the Midhurst Hall Board. I live at 14 Luella Boulevard. Unfortunately, I don't see Ron in the audience, but I have a couple of questions that maybe somebody else on the panel can answer. Let me find my right pocket. We are very happy to see that the pavilion is finally coming to fruition, but we have some questions that probably can be answered as we go along later on in the program here. But Mayor, through the Mayor to Ron Belcourt or his designate, do you have a rendering of what the new pavilion would look like? So we would like to post it for fundraising activities. That was number one. Two is, does the $270,100 plus taxes cover the parking lot, hydro service, lighting inside and security lighting outside, water service, rink boards, concrete pad, landscaping, including security fences, completely enclosing the pavilion? Three, grubbing remains at $18,980 plus taxes, and it's already been awarded. Four, what would be a good date for a media event sod turning? And we, the Midhurst Board, have voted not to require piping or refrigeration.
I can answer one question, and Director Smith can probably correct me. The 270 is simply for the pavilion and the pad.
Okay,
So the other items, because remember, we tabled roughly a $450,000 budget. So basically, the hydro, all those amenities would be on top of it.
okay,
So, I mean, the report does suggest it would still, without the piping, would still be within the discussion we had
okay.
on the cost of the pavilion. And as far as answers to the other about renderings and that, I'm not sure if they're, they were presented with the bids, or I'm getting a negative, so I think we're gonna have to get back to you on that one.
Yeah, I would imagine the contractor would have a plan. What do you think? Anyway, maybe we get a copy of the picture or whatever it may be that they're working off of.
Yeah,
That's all
no.
we're looking for.
Okay, that's fine. So does that answer your question? Okay, Councillor Austin?
Through you, Mayor French, to Mr. Monk. Can you tell me the reasoning behind why the Midhurst Hall Board chose to not support the idea of the refrigerated piping?
Too expensive. It'll drive the price up too high. And with Grenfell never using theirs, we don't think we'd ever use it either. And, I'll be long dead and buried before we need it, so I'm not too concerned about it.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Monk, and of course the Hall Board for all you folks do. I'm on fire.
Turn your speaker down.
So low as we go. I turned it up, now it stopped. There you go. We're on fire. Oh, jeez. And it's not my phone, thank you.
Actually, point towards you first.
It's the metal plate. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you, and also while you're sitting here, if possibly, I did some numbers earlier today, and with all the things that you asked questions about, the total I got was somewhere around $394,000, and I know that's a 90% development charge is funded, and possibly we could just get confirmation from our Director of Finance how much funds the Hall Board has to raise for their portion of that $394,000.
Director Schmidt?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Hanna. So I believe with a price tag of roughly $400,000, it's 10% would be required to be funded through non-DCs. 5% of that would be through the community hall, and I believe the other 5% was coming from the township.
Thank you, sir.
So that's how much?
20.
Who's got a calculator?
I guess put in dollar terms, based on 400,000, it'd be 20,000.
20,000 from the Hall Board.
Yes, from the
Okay.
Hall Board. For
Good.
round numbers.
Round numbers, 20,000? Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you. Probably have time for one more question, if anybody in the audience has any other questions. Okay, seeing none, we shall move on. And we have correspondence and information items. And to get it on the floor, can I have a mover and a seconder? Austin Ritchie. That correspondence and information items 8.2 through to 8.4 be received as information. Is there any of these we would like to discuss? Councillor Austin?
Just comment on 8.2.
Okay, carry on.
I just want to commend the Barrie Rotary Club for their support of the new program that saw 12 children who are new to Canada to allow them to attend the NVCA's Camp Tiffin summer day camp. I think they deserve a lot of praise for doing that. That would be the Rotary Club of Barrie. Good for them.
Duly noted. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor? Carried. And now we'll move on to action items, and the first one we need to get on the floor is a file for Malfera. Can I have a mover and a seconder? McConkey and Hannah. And I'll just read the resolution so we know what we're talking about. The report from the planner regarding SP-2017-001, 2299647 Ontario Limited v. Malfera, dated September 6, 2017, be received, and that a site plan agreement for the proposed gas bar with canopy and commercial building located at 4712 County Road 90 be drafted. The mayor and clerk execute the necessary agreements once all technical aspects are addressed within the agreement to the satisfaction of Township Solicitor, Township Consulting Engineer, and staff. So any questions on this report? Councillor McConkey?
I thought I had read that it was a gas station before and that it's becoming, it's going back to a gas station. Did I read that incorrectly, or is it a new gas station?
Through you, Mayor French, to Councillor McConkey. The use has been used for a number of vehicle services or vehicle servicing type uses. As far as it being used for a gas station in the past, I'm not sure if it has. I believe that this is a new gas station, but I do understand that it was used to certify vehicles, I believe gas emissions and things of that nature, along with some automobile repair and things of that nature. So I believe that this is a new gas station.
Yeah, and Mayor, Councillor McConkey, before I go to Deputy Mayor Allen, I've been there 20 years, and there was never a gas station in the time I was there, so it may have been prior to that, though. Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. Do we know whether it's a chain that's going to go in there, like a Max, or a chain of a gas station?
Director Spagnol?
Through you, Mayor French, to Deputy Mayor Allen, at this point, I'm not aware of any type of chain that is going to be located in the site plan, but planning staff can follow up to see if there's any additional information that can be provided, and may provide council that information offline.
Councillor McConkey?
Based on the drawing, it's not the one right at the corner of George Johnson and County Road 90, because it looks like it's off to the side, because there's another garage up the road, so I thought it was up from George Johnson. Can you confirm, please?
Director Spagnol?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councillor McConkey. The subject property is located on the northwest corner of George Johnson Road and the county road, so it is on the corner.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Sorry, but in the picture, there's a little bit of a carve out there. What is that part that,
Bell Canada.
is it?
The reason I know that, because when my phone fails, that's where they go fix it. Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor. It's not buzzing. I don't know whether our fire chief or our director of planning would answer this question, but being that it's a commercial site and a gas station, do we have the authority, or would it automatically just include sprinkler systems?
Director Spagnol?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councillor Hannah. An underground water storage tank will be required for fire suppression.
But I meant like sprinkler systems inside being a commercial location.
Director Spagnol?
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Councillor Hannah. It's my understanding that a requirement will not be needed for the sprinkler systems because the reservoir tank is provided, unless Chief Gavay provides additional comment in that respect.
Chief Gavay, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Your Worship, for the opportunity to respond. Basically, not having seen all the paperwork that goes with this submission, I'm unable to ascertain what the building code actually requires, and it would be the Ontario Building Code that would specify whether or not the building required sprinklers. I don't believe it would, but I'd have to see the intent before I could make that judgment, or the Chief Building Officer could do the same.
Thank you, and if I could just respond, I would strongly support sprinkler systems, not just in all new commercial sites that we go forward with, but even if we could in residential, and I brought this up in the past, and I know we may not have that authority, it might have to be a provincial legislation coming forward for residential, but if we could do it for commercial, I think it would be a great area to have it because of our mutual aid system in that area and so on for fire suppression.
Councillor McConkey?
I just agree with Councillor Hannah because of the mutual aid agreement with Angus, and that we don't have, and it might be with Barry at that location, but I would think it would be more with Angus. Because you're with Barry, right?
No, I usually get Angus or ourselves.
Thank you, Worship. In the event of a fire at that facility, basically the City of Barrie comes up with our automatic aid agreement to George Johnston Road, so they'd probably still respond to that, even though it'd be a few meters further past their boundary. Township of Essa would also respond under that service agreement, and we would respond also out of Minising.
Any other questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried, sir. Okay, on to the next action report. The Midhurst Pavilion. And can I have a mover and a seconder to get it on the table? Hannah McConkey. And just so you know what we're doing, that the report from the Director of Recreation, Parks and Properties regarding the Midhurst Pavilion Construction Award dated September 6, 2017 be received, that consolidated contract be awarded the contract for the construction of the Midhurst Pavilion at a cost of $270,100 plus taxes. And I think the option we're choosing, because what I heard, that the refrigeration piping be removed from the Midhurst Pavilion project. Is that correct? Is that the motion you're supporting? Okay, good. So open to questions. Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor French. Great project, great. I'm glad the cost came in online. Interested at such a discrepancy, consolidated contract being half of Morgan's and about 40 some odd % of Bertram's. Does anybody know why there was such a discrepancy in the bidding?
I don't think we have an answer, but even if I go back 20 years with the Grenfell Pavilion, at that time, we had quotes from 100,000 to 300,000. And it is the kind of style and type of construction, and there are different ways of skinning the cat, as they say, and some are very, very expensive. CO Brindley?
Thank you, Mayor. If council can recall some of the pricing we had on the first fire station quote, we had a similar disparity or a similar diversity of bids. So what happens too at this time of the year is some businesses are busy, and if you want their business, they charge you extensively. So.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, Mayor, and obviously I'm supporting that we do not need the piping for the refrigeration, because this pavilion is not just for a hockey rink, it's for year-round, and there's lots of other things that take place during the year than just skating and hockey. So it's nice to see that this is going forward in this community, because they do need something. And I think the other positive thing here is that it gives other communities an idea of what we can get for $270,000 when they want to go forward and have a pavilion as well. So I'm strongly supporting it.
Councillor Austin?
I'm wondering if it might be wise to defer a decision on this because our Director of Parks and Recreation is unable to be here tonight to answer some key questions. I had the same thought in mind that Deputy Mayor Allen had concerning the wide discrepancy among the bids, and I appreciate CEO Brindley's response to that, and yours as well, Mayor French. whether or not it's a good idea to not have the piping, I'm wondering if, I've heard what Councillor Hannah has to say and what the Hall Board has had to say, but I'm wondering which we should do. Hold off until we've had that discussion as well with the Director of Parks and Recreation, or, is there a hurry to get this started?
So maybe a comment I would provide is the piping, I think the reason there's been second thought, the piping definitely is a lot more expensive than even estimated. And I understand why, and I don't believe it's incorrect. But the reality is, at some point, there will be a full-service recreation center in Midhurst, unlike even Grenfell. And Grenfell, I'm not sure if it'll ever be hooked up, and so it's just slowly decaying. So, but that was only $10,000. I'm not sure I'd want to spend $200 and some thousand for something that may never be hooked up. And so, quite honestly, I give them credit for kind of reconsidering it when became aware that the costs may be very expensive. And I think some of the feedback got is a reality. At some point, there is going to be a full-service recreation center. So we probably don't need it as an ice rink. It's a multi-purpose pavilion for various events and that. So I'm definitely going to be supported tonight. Councillor Ritchie, I think.
Yes, thank you, Mayor French. The 270 that's the concrete slab, the rink boards, the roof?
No. It's
Can
about
somebody break that
$395.
down, or is it in here? Maybe
Yeah, it's in the report. You have to add the 270 plus the 75 plus the 25 plus 2,500 plus something else. Okay, did you have a follow-up, Councillor Austin?
It was similar to Councillor Ritchie's question, because I believe Mr. Monk was asking a similar question. Are there other expenses beyond the 270? And I think 270,000, and I think Councillor Hannah did some calculations and came up with a total overall figure for everything, including the pavilion, the slab, and the necessary work around the grounds to 394,000. Is that correct?
Councillor Hannah, you can respond.
Thank you. With all the things that Councillor Ritchie inquired about, which includes the hydro, the grubbing, the boards, the parking lot, the total of everything coming, including landscape, was $394,000. So it's way below what we originally approved, and we're taking the piping out for obvious reasons. While it would be nice to have, it's not justifiable at that expense. It's almost the cost of the pavilion. So, and while I understand your thoughts about waiting for Mr. Belcourt to be here, I think it's I'm comfortable that Mr. Belcourt, the Director of Parks and Rec, has done his research and got accurate estimates for the costing, because he had to delay it to make sure he got total clarification on what the bidders were presenting. So I'm comfortable that he has got an accurate bid, and I believe that it's been delayed long enough and we need to go forward.
Go Deputy Mayor Allen, and then I'll come back to Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Mayor French. Wouldn't the numbers be the total project of 450 less the 25 refrigeration in that budget number, less the difference in the clearing and grubbing between 25,000 and the actual 19,000, which is 6,000. So 25,000 plus 6,000 off of 450 is about 420.
But the 270, I think the original, if you go back further, it was 295 for the
294?
pavilion, so it's
Okay.
another 25, so
Okay.
it's around 400.
Okay.
That's what I
Okay, follow-up?
Just one further question, again, through you, Mayor French, and directed at Mr. Monk. Your decision, or your committee's decision to not go with the piping and the refrigeration, did you have this information in time to make that decision?
Yes, I did. We did a email vote,
Okay.
and
And you were able to do that today?
we did that today.
Yeah, okay.
We're efficient.
Okay. Okay, so with that in mind, And I got to get some correction from the clerk. The clerk, I think, has suggested I need to table the motion complete as it is, and then the mover and seconder chooses the option. So I'll just read it again, and then Councillor Hanna, as the mover, you can choose the option. Is that correct? Okay, I'll read it again. That the report from the Director of Recreation, Parks and Properties regarding the Midhurst Pavilion Construction Award dated September 6, 2017 be received, and the consolidated contracting be awarded the contract for the construction of Midhurst Pavilion at a cost of $270,100 plus taxes, and that the refrigeration piping be included in the Midhurst Pavilion project, or that the refrigeration piping be removed from the Midhurst Pavilion project. So, Councillor Hanna, your option?
The option would be to remove the piping from the Midhurst Pavilion project.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Could I request a recorded vote on that, please?
Yes, you may.
Councillor Austin.
Yes.
Councillor Hanna.
Yes?
Councillor McConkey.
Yes.
Councillor Ritchie.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Allen.
Yes.
And Mayor French.
Yes. That's a yes.
The motion is carried.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to the next report, accessibility policy review and update. Can I have a mover and seconder and get it on the floor? Austin, Hannah? That the report from the deputy clerk regarding the accessibility policy review and update dated September 6, 2017 be received, and the accessibility policy be approved. Questions, because we do have the deputy clerk here. Councillor Austin.
No questions. I just wanted to acknowledge that I'm the Springwater Council representative on the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, and I am quite happy with the report and approve everything that's in it.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Next item is the draft municipal election sign bylaw. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Alan, Hannah? That the report from the clerk regarding the draft municipal election sign bylaw dated September 6, 2017 be received, and that pending council comments, the municipal election sign bylaw be presented for consideration at the next regular meeting of council. And maybe I'll let our clerk introduce it.
Thank you. So as requested through items for future consideration and through elections preparations, the current municipal election sign bylaw was reviewed. The prior bylaw is from 2009. Aside from minor changes in wording and the addition to registered third-party advertisers, the bylaw, the intent of the bylaw remains the same. We've cleaned up wording and just cleared up a few possible confusing areas in the bylaw.
Questions, comments? Councillor Austin.
Yes, first of all, I'm sorry that Councillor Coughlin is unable to be here tonight, because I think it was she who requested an examination of the changes, in particular the number and location of the signs for candidates. So it's unfortunate she wasn't here. My first question has to do with item 3.2 in the bylaw. It talks about a third-party election sign. Can you explain what a third-party election sign might be?
Madam Clerk.
Amendments to the Municipal Elections Act in 2006 saw the addition of registered third-party advertisers. There is now a way for people other than candidates or school board candidates to advertise in opposition or in support of a candidate, as well as questions on the ballot. So they would follow the same type of process as a candidate. They'd have to register through the clerk's office, and those would be the only bodies allowed to advertise throughout an election.
I think specifically refers to kind of ratepayer groups and community interest groups. Councillor Austin?
Okay, and item 3.7, talking about location of signs. Does this mean that we can't put an election sign on a township road? For example, in my ward, I couldn't put a sign on Floss Road 7, but on the township property, but I could put a sign, say, on a county road, for example, Orr Lake Road within my ward?
Madam Clerk?
The restrictions for signs, county roads and provincial highways, we cannot regulate, but township roads in the road allowance, no signage will be allowed. Private properties that are on that road, you need the property owner's permission, but on the road allowance, it would not be allowed.
Is that a change, or has it always been that way, or has it been that way since the last election as well?
Madam Clerk?
The policy has always stated such. That was one of the areas to correct for clarification, as there was a comma missing, which it could be construed in different ways without the comma.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. And just for the record, I believe Councillor Colligan sent her regrets. She came down with strep throat. But last election campaign, there was an issue sometimes with respect to the measurement of being able to put signs from the center of the road. I don't see that contained in here. Can you refresh us on what those rules are to be classified as on municipal property versus non-municipal property?
Madam Clerk?
Yes, I believe generally a road allowance is 66 feet.
From the center of the road?
From, 66 feet total.
Right, so 33.
Yeah, and the complication on that, we found throughout the township, if you look at the roads and the road allowances, they're not necessarily in the center of the road allowance. That's why it did not include the 33 from center of the road, because some of them favor one side of the road or not. CAO Brindley?
Thank you, Mayor, for bringing that up, because I thought I might add is, when we actually go inspect, we actually go from center line knowing that there's a certain road profile. That said, there are certain circumstances where the mayor's mentioned where we might own more land, or in fact, a homeowner, I can think of one in Midhurst near the river, where in fact their front yard starts like 60 feet back. There are some flexibility that we do provide into the system to make sure people are represented well. So we try to manage those ones a bit better. We try to be by the letter of the law, but there are a few instances out there where we try to provide some responsible flexibility.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. I keep going the wrong mic here. I've had some discussion with the clerk, and I think the clerk has an appropriate answer, not that I necessarily agree, but at 3.23, which is says no municipal election sign shall be located, and it used to say within 100 feet of any or on any voting location property. It's now been eliminated, and it just says that no municipal election sign shall now be located on any voting location property. And I liked it personally better before, because I think you could have a sign almost touching the property of a voting location if somebody had a residence next door to it, and they allowed you to put a sign on their property. And I would suggest that there has to be some tolerance here. The other part is 3.3, where it says no election sign used to say in front of our building out here within 300 feet, and as the clerk points out, there's a house down at the corner that might be within 300 feet of our property. So I'm suggesting that one way around this would be to maintain the current or what used to be there before these amendments came forward, saying where the signs could be, but adding in there, except with the discretion of the clerk. So the one, for example, at the corner where there's a house would be within 300 feet of the township building, we would make an exception there. If we don't maintain what we have there, for example, somebody could put signs right across the road here if they had the permission of the city of Barrie, for example, or the fire department or the provincial fire service down the road. If they allowed them, they could put signs right across in front of our building here. So I have some concerns with that, and that same could occur if we had a voting location other than just at this building. So I think we have to do a little bit of work on these two sign location revisions that have been proposed here.
Any general comment from the clerk on that?
Just to explain the intent of that change, we wanted to ensure that private property owners all had the same rights when it came to placing election signs on their property. To have potentially, say, just using this house on the corner as an example, it would definitely be within 300 feet of the boundaries of the property. And to not allow them to have any election signs just based on their location. We wanted to ensure that all private property owners had the same rights when it came to choosing whether or not to have election signs on their property. But if council does want to reinstate that, it would be council's decision.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you, and I would support reinstating it, but adding in there, but exceptions could be made at the discretion of the clerk, because the house at the corner, for example, we would obviously say, yes, you have a property within 300 feet of the township border of our property, so we'll make an exception. But as I point out, that there could be other polling locations we identify where there could be signs put right in front of the voting location, or there could be signs placed on the other side of the road here, and we have no control or say over that. With this revision, the way it's written today.
Well, it says location property. And I don't think the city of Barrie or the ministry will be providing permission to put election signs. And I can see a number of, well, first of all, I don't like the idea of putting the clerk, who's responsible for the elections, on the hook of picking and choosing, which I don't think is appropriate. And the reality is, I can think of tons of places like in Elmville, even under this, you know, I mean, they'll be allowed now to kind of place some signage where before they were prohibited. And it does go back to, is it appropriate for people to be able to express their support for a candidate? So I don't have a problem with that. I hear what you're saying, but I definitely don't like the idea of having any condition in a bylaw that's dependent on the whim of the clerk. And I'm not sure a clerk would care for that particular responsibility. So anybody else have any comment on that? Councillor McConkey?
I'm just trying to see where we would be covered then. Okay, so what we ran into in one election was one of the councillors or to-be councillors had an election sign on their car. And they drove into this parking lot and they were asked to leave because you cannot have the sign, although it's not located here. So like, I know we're saying located, so is it located, or like, I just want to make sure that someone can't drive around with the sign and park their car, that it's worded in such a way that it can be enforced that way. Because I did agree with what wasn't stated at that time.
Madam Clerk?
That is actually something that was thought of. So in 3.4, at the end, because it's saying no municipal election sign or advertising device shall be placed on any municipal property, including but not limited to parks, trails, road allowances, or sites within municipal buildings, and this includes mobile signage. So a sign on a vehicle would be mobile signage, which states that it wouldn't be allowed within that area.
Okay, I was thinking mobile signage was like the stuff that you put outside, you know, with the, on the trailers sort of thing. Okay.
Councillor Hannah?
Just one observation, I'm sure everybody read the report, probably caught it as well, but we used to say you couldn't put signs on trees, that now you can put signs on trees. But as the clerk pointed out, if you own the property and it's your tree, I guess you can put a sign on it. So I just wanted to make sure everybody else was aware of that as well.
The other question I had, and I'll let the clerk explain it, I said, what happens if I want to go by a billboard, on the highway? Does that, and the response from the clerk was?
There is a restriction in sizing to 16 square feet. It was 4 feet by 4 feet, but to ensure if somebody wants an odd-sized sign, 16 square feet. So as this policy is written, that would not be, they would not be allowed.
Okay, so Alan is the mover, Hannah's the seconder. Do you want any changes, or what's the flavor? All those in favor as read? Carried. Okay, moving on to 9.5, Springwater Swing. Can I have a mover and a seconder to get it on the table? Alan? Hannah? That the report from the Recreation and Special Events Coordinator regarding the 2017 Springwater Swing Golf Tournament dated September 6, 2017 be received. That the proceeds from the Springwater Swing Golf Tournament be allocated as follows, and there's suggested 3 categories: Community Assistance Program, Charitable Organizations, Physician Recruitment, and further the disbursement of the above noted funds be in accordance with Township Protocol. Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor French. Can we just, before we discuss this, review where we stand with balances in these respective, categories, and with respect to the previous year's golf tournament? How much remaining do we have from previous years?
I think the one answer, and it's not in the report, and we have an exact number now on this year's, so that might help, and maybe I can go to Brianna to maybe just come up and share the nickels and dimes with us, because it was a very close estimate.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor French. So the exact numbers we would have for the tournament this year would be $31,284.86. That would be net revenue.
Okay, I think that's one number. And I guess in that pool of money from the golf tournament, do we have funds from the prior year? And I know Director Schmidt will be back to us shortly on that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, it appears that there's about $9,800 from previous year still to be spent, if you will.
And that resides where? Just in the golf? Where does that reside?
It currently resides in the Mayor's Golf Tournament reserve, if you will.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Councillor Hannah.
Thank you. Not necessarily a question, just an observation. In order to allow some flexibility with the where we're going to dedicate these funds, I was thinking along the lines more of something like we just put create a fund where we put all the Springwater Swing money that's generated, and we just identify certain things specific, like the physician recruitment, we put a number in there, but the other things like the charitable organizations and community assistance program, we leave those amounts blank. It would give us flexibility if we had the money, and we just take the money as we need it and put it into those different organizations rather than putting identifying amounts in there, which does not provide any flexibility.
Councilor McConkey.
For a charitable organization, I don't know if you'll consider this, but I know we talk a lot about protecting our environment and that, and with the provincial I mean, the federal government not providing the funding for the Great Lakes and the protection of the Minising wetlands, I would like to see some of the money go towards the Friends of the Minising wetlands so that trees and preservation, as long as it's used in our area to preserve the trees and to grow some more trees, I'd like to see a certain amount. It doesn't have to be a lot, but I'd like to see, $1,200 or so go towards that.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Allen?
Thank you, Mayor French. Just following up, how much was provided last year to the Community Assistance Program? And I presume all of what was provided was spent thus far. Well, then, can we get a recap of that, please, and what's available there? And we provided $7,500 to physician recruitment in 2017 already, have we? No? But we earmarked it to come from
Yes.
golf tournament?
Yes.
So of the 41,000 combined we have so far, 7,500's been committed already for the physician recruitment, is that correct? And can you just review what was given to CAP before and what remains, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Allen, based on council resolution from May 17th, 2017, 5,000 was allocated to CAP from last year. Right now, there remains about $6,800 in actually CAP. So that's still remaining to be spent, if you will.
5,000 was allocated and it's now 6,800.
There was additional monies allocated to that account prior to that. So there is $6,800 in, just over $6,800 in CAP to be dispersed. That doesn't include any funds from this year. And then there was also money set aside for the international competition grant, which is a separate fund. I guess what staff is looking at, or more importantly, I guess myself is looking at, is that this council is supportive of the Springwater Swing. What I don't want to see is at the end of this council, funds remaining whereby you are in a position where you'd like those funds allocated, and if you don't, then it could be future councils that are making that decision. So that's kind of where I'm heading with this. Does a decision have to be made tonight? No, but again, this council is the one that essentially has raised those funds, if you will, and so the intent is to have those dollars allocated appropriately.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mayor French. So of the 41,000 total, being the 31,285 plus 9,800, 7,500 has been committed to physician recruitment. That nets 33,500 plus 6,800 in CAP, so that's 40,000 and a bit that we have to decide what to do with. So I would recommend that we can't make a decision right now, but that we need a report or we need some way to consider the options to fairly allocate this significant amount of money.
Actually, a comment I would like to make is, I know we said 7,500. I think the request was 8, I believe, from Barrie Physician Recruitment. And quite honestly, the only thing I would like to, because that we have said that's where the funding's coming from specifically, I would like to have 8 set aside, and even though we haven't heard from Midland, another 3,000 just put in for physician recruitment, and just park it there and dedicate 11,000 to physician recruitment. And quite honestly, I think the other ones, I don't know if I want, I don't want to slice it up that, okay, we have so much money in the community assistance program, let's run around with application forms, see who will use it up, because that was never the intent of it. The intent was for people that are in particular need to come to us and ask for assistance, and we've had some real cases, and maybe we don't have as many as we thought, and so we may have to revisit that. So what I would like to see coming out of this is a resolution to set aside 11,000 for physician recruitment out of this, and signify that, there's whatever's left would go towards community assistance program, charitable organizations, or, as Councillor McConkie, maybe use the expression other worthy organizations, because I'm not sure if Friends of Minising Wetlands would be a charitable organization or not. So if the mover and seconder has any comfort level with that. Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor French. In regards to the physician recruitment, I sit on the Midland, the mayor sits on the Barrie. I'm on my second term with this, and I still haven't seen any doctors come. And maybe it's that, and that's open for a discussion. Maybe we should be just putting whatever amount of money aside, Mayor French, and just have the president of the hospital come down, do a nice check presentation, give it to the hospital directly, let them go and buy equipment with it, and leave it alone. And if and when the physician recruitment shows up on our doorstep with a doctor, then we'll pay attention. But I don't know, I think hell will freeze over before we see anything else happen, but that's open for discussion again. Whatever amount of money we agree on, give it to the hospital. That keeps our foot in the door and keeps the residents up in the north end that still goes to the north for the Midland Hospital. And as far as all that other money goes, well, I'd like to forward that to 9-6 on that other thing that you guys want to talk about, is I cannot and I will not support taxpayers' money going to a party. We raise this money. You want to have a little swing dig afterwards, fine. But I'm not using taxpayers' money on the other, and I'll talk to that later, but that's where I stand on this. Thank you.
Again, actually, with the county, you made it very clear, because they fund hospitals. And one of the clarifications that we had this spring was, the hospital shouldn't be double dipping when it comes to the hospital. Physician recruitment's different, and everybody agreed physician recruitment is different. So all I'm suggesting is, at some point, I'm hoping they come and do a presentation saying,
Please.
yes,
Yes.
and we can say there might be $3,000
Yep.
for this year. I'd prefer to handle it that way, that we isolate for the 2, 8, and 3, and see where it goes. At least it's there, so if they come, there is some money.
Whatever's
Yeah,
best. I
yeah.
know the other municipalities in the north used to give to physician recruitment. They stopped it, they just give it directly to the hospital, and then they, whether these new high-tech beds that talk to you and comb your hair and, all this kind of stuff. But at least we know the money's going directly to that. But if they show up on our doorstep with a doctor, we'll pay attention.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Allen.
So if we earmark 11,000, 7,500 of which we've already earmarked,
Yeah.
off the 41, that still leaves $30,000 plus the 6,800 in cap. So how do we want as a council to move forward to try to deal with this?
My suggestion would be is, aside from the specific allocation of physician recruitment, we would say, and other funds are available for community assistance program, charitable organizations, and maybe other worthy organizations, like add a category. So people come and apply, as they do now, and we say yes or no to funding, rather than isolating it into these categories. Because I don't think we're going to have an issue with finding funds when someone does come to the table. Councillor Austin?
So, yes, I agree with you and Councillor McConkey too. Like the second category, charitable organizations, limits us. So if we had a different term for that second group, because as I recall, we provided some funding for EDHS students who went to the Yukon. That's not a charitable organization, but we did give them money. So those kind of requests, and maybe we might want to include. I just want a different term. And what was, Mayor French, what was the term that you came up with? Worthy organizations or worthy events?
With what you just said, I mean, I guess in some ways I just simply dropped the charitable organization and say to other worthy organizations, they could be charities or not, and that way it wouldn't be as restricted.
Or
And with that, I'll go to Director Schmidt first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to provide a couple of comments here. So the items that are listed here as to be allocated towards community assistance program or charitable organizations or physician recruitment weren't supposed to be a kind of an all-encompassing. They were suggestions. So obviously council can allocate funds as they wish. I did want to make one other comment, though. You had indicated that, of the remaining funds, you wanted to just essentially leave it aside and say that it's available for a community assistance program. My only concern with that is when members of council or somebody asks me how much money is available for community assistance, I can't answer the question because I don't know how much money then is allocated towards community assistance. I know today that there's still $6,800. I don't know of the funds from this year of 31,000. Are we allocating any of those monies or are we not? So just that's kind of why I'm asking the question. But again, I'm in council's hands as to how you want to deal with this.
Councillor Austin?
As a member of the Community Assistance Program Committee, may I suggest then that for a ballpark figure, we top it up to $15,000 so that we already have $6,800. So whatever figure is required, 68 plus whatever, to top it up to $15,000, because I think, Councillor Hannah, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's what we started with in the first place. So if CAP has a yearly budget of $15,000, that's quite reasonable.
C.O. Brindley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Two things. I'll first dig into this one. I see sort of two thoughts here. One is to still allocated pots, and the other just to have one larger pot. And if it's a CAP application, we dip into that 30,000 or whatever that number is, or if it's a charitable organization, we dip into that 30,000. So we have to sort of narrow that down. The other thing I just want to bring up is when we advertised for the golf tournament, we were very specific in what we advertised these funds to go to. So I just want to bring that up to council for their consideration, because if we start allocating money to things that people donated this money for, that it's not that, there may be some concerns.
Now, the only thing, if you look at the poster, we modified it this year and said other community needs, maybe you have the terminology there, Brianna?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor French. So this year, the wording was benefiting the community assistance program, physician recruitment, and local initiatives.
So I don't think we've tied our string around that, but yeah. So, Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. I'm not sure, Councillor Austin, how much money we had originally. It might have been 10,000. I'm sorry, I just don't recall. But given the discussion, I think that supports my comments, was that we just need some flexibility where we put this money so we can access it for other things. I understand what the Director of Finance is saying. We need to put some in specific mailboxes, if you like. I'm just not sure we're encompassing enough of them or giving ourselves enough flexibility, and maybe we could ask the Director of Finance to come back with a report that would be maybe a little more specific based on our conversations here tonight.
I just wondered, but to move this along, are we in general agreement of at least dedicating, say, 11,000 physician recruitment? And then, quite honestly, I'd like kind of comment back, because the way we did word the kind of promotion for the golf tournament, we didn't say charitable organizations. We did say community assistance program is an identifiable one. And picking up what Councilor McConkey said when you're out, maybe we should be changing that charitable organizations to worthy community organizations or something like that. But can we modify it that we can, again, it's moved by Alan, second by Hannah, that we would commit 11,000 to the physician recruitment and request the Director of Finance to report back on what? Deputy Mayor Allen?
I would be willing to modify it to allocate 11,000, so 7,500 plus an additional 3,500 to physician recruitment. I would say top up cap to 10,000 with 3,200, so that's 4,200, and the remainder I would leave it in the Springwater golf tournament until we can identify future causes that might be worthy.
Councillor Austin?
I think I can concur with what Deputy Mayor Allen just said. I'd like to stay away from the word organizations. I liked what was said on the golf tournament brochure, worthy community initiatives. Because if we designate if we use the word organizations, that means that it has to, whatever we support has to involve an organization, whereas we have more flexibility if we just simply say initiatives.
Councillor Anna?
As the seconder, I would support what Deputy Mayor Allen has said, but I would like us to consider putting in the word there that it be done at the approval of council.
Yes.
So the funds are always done at the approval of council, not just from a committee or something.
I think that's in our bylaw too. Councillor McConkey?
The only problem I have is, and I think we have to look at the terms of reference with CAP, as we go into the election year, how do we know that, and I hate to say this, but there has to be an unbiased, and that's why I think CAP has to move away from 3 councillors' decision to maybe all of council. We just have to watch that in the election year, because there could be some awarded into different wards versus other wards, and it can be perceived differently.
Do you want to comment? CEO Brindley, do you want to comment? Because I think there is a restriction on what powers the CAP committee has.
Thank you. Well, I was sort of thinking that in the interim of when, if and when council would be lame duck, we're not even sure council will be lame duck, that power for that limited period of time can be delegated. It would, unfortunately, for council, would be to staff, because that's the only person, and to be honest, it's to the CAO, probably, and clerk. So for that gap period, we could delegate the power to make sure if something came up, it was dealt with. But Councilor McConkey, you bring up about all of council versus some, and I'm not sure how to address that. I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Sorry, repeat that for Councillor McConkey.
No, thank you. And Councilor McConkey, you had some concerns about the committee of 3 versus council as a whole approving it. And I'm sorry, I just don't have an answer to that part. Okay. I have the answer to the part that, while council's lame duck, we can, in advance of that decision, have a staff report to council to delegate authority. But the other dynamic, I'm sorry, I can't address.
I think the point I was making, though, is even in terms of reference for emergency, I think it's only up to $500. So, and everything else has to be approved by council. So that, we threw that in because there's a couple, so I don't think funds are going to get out of control. Councillor Austin?
And just to further explain to Councillor McConkey, that $500 limit that the 3-member CAP committee can work with allows the flexibility in case of emergencies when a worthy case is needed and then the money is really needed quite quickly. We have the option of providing $500 without having to wait for the next council meeting to make a decision, but it is limited to $500.
Okay, so shall we play? Okay, right now that some of the agreement, 3,200, the community assistance program to top it up, 11,000 physician recruitment, and so there'd be. And I think the rest would be best to say $26,885 if that's what the number is, give or take, to other community initiatives. Yes, Deputy Mayor Allen.
Yeah, just to clarify, if you take those two, 11,000 and 3,200 away, that leaves 17,085 of this year's money. Added on is the remainder 9,800 from last year to get the total 26,885.
Yeah. But by bringing them together, we bring it up to date. So if we're in agreement, so basically other community initiatives. So, and quite honestly, if we had some unusual situation, there's no reason we couldn't go back to council and say, we need some more funding to the community assistance program, and it could be removed because that is a community initiative. So I think it would cover it. So no, we'll use that one because I think from your perspective, Director Schmidt, you'd like the money that's available allocated rather than piecemeal, is that correct? Like instead of saying, well, of 2016 and 2017, should we take the pool? Because that's what we're thinking of here. If we put 26,885, then we've accounted for all monies existing and this year. So maybe you can
Through you, Mr. Mayor,
assist.
that would be preferred. And again, just to clarify, just looking at the actual advertisement, so not the semantics, other local initiatives is what was actually on the brochure, so just to remain consistent.
We will be consistent with the wording. Okay, so let's try this one. Moved by Allen, second by Hannah, that the report from the Recreation and Special Events Coordinator regarding the 2017 Springwater Swing Golf Tournament days September 6, 2017 be received, that proceeds from the Springwater Swing Golf Tournament be allocated to $3,200 to the Community Assistance Program, $26,885, other local initiatives, $11,000 to physician recruitment. And further, that the disbursement of the above noted funds be in accordance with the township protocol. All those in favor? Carried. Very good discussion. Thank you. Okay, moving on to celebrate Springwater signature event. I need a mover and a seconder to get discussion. McConkey. Another arm. Austin. That the report from the Special Events and Recreation Coordinator regarding the Celebrate Springwater signature event dated September 6, 2017 be received, that funding the amount of $39,500 be allocated, the 2018 Recreation Parks and Properties operation budget for the 2018 Celebrate Springwater, and that Celebrate Springwater become an annual event to be held the second last Saturday of June. Okay, open for discussion and questions. Councillor Austin.
I have difficulty supporting this. We're talking about a one-night party each year at a cost of almost $40,000. And we just finished discussing money that was raised at a golf swing tournament, or golf tournament, you know, a similar amount of money being used for ongoing projects and worthy initiatives. So, well, more money to spend on a one-night party, to me, I just can't see that being a wise use of taxpayers' money. We could use that money to go towards the cost of a dog park, go towards the cost of a splash pad, and I think we should be looking for advice from the Recreation Board for its opinion too. So I have great difficulty supporting this.
Thank you. Comments? Or Deputy Mayor Allen?
I also have a problem approving this at this point in time. I think it should wait until budget time as a potential consideration and fold that into what we're going to possibly be providing to each of the community halls, as we did this year, to help them with their events. So I think it's premature and unwise to commit this amount of money for one party at this point in time. I think it should be part of the discussion that we have at 218 budget time.
CEO Brindley first, or was it Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In response to the last two comments, staff has only recommended that this actually go to the 2018 budget for consideration. It's not asking for council to approve this today. It's saying, here we had an event, we were very successful, and we'd like council to consider this as part of the 2018 budget. So I think what I'm hearing is actually in line with the last two comments, other than the fact that some concern that we shouldn't do it at all.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
I appreciate those comments, CAO Brindley, and welcome back, by the way. We missed you. But with experience with Simcoe County and with other budgets, once you sort of earmark these things, they have a funny way of getting into the budget and being place marked there and having more difficulty removing them than talking about it at the time. So I wouldn't want to see even this potentially provided for in a 218 budget until we had discussion at that time.
Councillor McConkey?
I'm on a different page than all of you. Since I've been on council, it's been 8 years, I asked, and I think Councillor Hannah was with me, we wanted a signature event for Springwater. Yes, we are a community of communities, but as Springwater itself, we do not have an event that recognizes us as Springwater. You go to every other, Barrie has their waterfront festivals. Barrie does a lot of festivals and different events. You go to New Tecumseh, they're known for their potato festival. Bradford's known for their soup festival. We're finally had one festival, and it was, you cannot just have one sporadically to build it to be a success. You have to keep moving forward and put your feet in, put your stake in the ground. Let us be proud. Let us celebrate Springwater. I think it's time. We're growing as a municipality, and we should grow and get recognition and branding for Springwater. So I will support it 100%.
Councillor Ritchie?
Mayor French, I want to tie this in. I cannot support taxpayers' dollars to go into this size of an event, this kind of money, but maybe we need to go back and look at this and look at the golf tournament that we've held and the extra money that we could take out of it. And the reason why I'm mentioning it, and I think our Director of Finance mentioned it as well, we've raised this money. This is council's money, not next council. This is our money. So if we've raised this money, then why can't we do something with it, like the signature event like you're talking about, but not to the extent that, and the cost of money. So we got a good pot of money there from the golf swing. Not that we need to go and blow it all, neither, but I would support taking some of that money towards what you're talking about. But to take taxpayers' dollars, you know what? I'm hearing a lot of people about water bills, everything else. You know what? I won't support taxpayers' dollars, but I would support taking money from the golf tournament and doing something to some event. Thank you.
Other, Councillor Hannah?
I think I have to take my kick at the cat as well. Well, I think Councillor McConkey makes a great observation that we need to have something that is unique to Springwater. I'm not sure I could support all of the things that are recommended here. Now, if we had an annual fireworks for the entire township and we charged people to come or at least pass the hat or something, I think the taxpayers could be more acceptable to that. And I think if we had a fireworks display that grew every year and people could come early and they could have food or whatever they want, if they want their kids to go on rides, well, then they have to pay. I just can't continually suggest that we have to keep using taxpayers' dollars. As Perry's pointed out, maybe we could put some of the swing money into having a large fireworks display, and I would be more interested in limiting it to something like that versus all the stuff that's in the report.
C.O. Brindley?
Thank you, Mayor French. A few things. One is the report itself I would like to be approved by council, even if it's the matter of taking out that second paragraph, because we should recognize that we had a great event and we did come in under budget. If we need to water down the second one to simply just say we would ask council consider this as part of the budget, but I know that the deputy mayor has concerns there. The other thing about here that we should consider too is that it's almost like, I don't want to compare it to EDHS, but I would consider the 39.5 a backstop. We've done the event once and we know how it works now. I will be actually going out and Brian and actually going for sponsorships. So my goal at the end of the day, hopefully, is that this won't cost the municipality anything. My hope is, yeah, it'll be paid for by our community, through sponsorships, whether it's title sponsorship, fireworks sponsorship, those who, all the inflatables we had, So I think we could bring this cost, I still would like the backstop there as part of the budget. We can discuss this as part of the budget process, not today. But you almost want the backstop in case. But the other side of this is, I think we can actually get a lot of sponsorships done because we've proven the event, we've proven attendance, we've got the bugs fixed, and I think we could have a really good event still. And it's really up to council.
Councillor McConkey?
I agree with, it is a lot of money. I agree with what Councillor Ritchie was saying. Maybe we do drop it, but the way we can drop it is how we work it operationally. And this report doesn't get into that, but I think that we do have to have some type of backstop. We have to consider it. And you're right, Councillor Hannan, we may have to charge for some of it, like to get the good musical talent. Maybe our music talent will be even more, and we will be charging people to come, just like Kempenfest does for the long weekend in Barrie. They make a lot of money and they get good bands. So we can still do something, but I think operationally the staff just wanted to know, yeah, we want to go forward with this next year. We have to sort of plug some type of budget. Maybe we're not ready for that amount, but, and I think Robert's on the right track where we have to look at sponsorships, and operationally we'll make it very, very effective, and every year it will get better.
I guess I'd like to make some final comments. I'm kind of along the lines of where Councillor McConkey started. I don't like spending taxpayer monies, but we got nothing but positive comments about it because we've never done it before. And we are growing, and we keep talking about a community of communities, but we offer nothing to bring those communities together. It's the first time. It's very successful. All credit to the organizers and that. And quite honestly, I'd be very supportive of the way the resolution is worded. I think we need to move forward. But with that said, as CEO Brindley said, on an annual event like this, when we're showcasing spring water, we didn't do it this year. I'll guarantee you, we could bring in $20,000, $25,000 in sponsorship without blinking an eye, because we bring it in for our golf tournament, and that's for a select few. And this is, I can start checking off, many people that would be happy to sponsor. We didn't go that route because we had funding and we wanted to celebrate 150, and we did it perfectly. And I think people would like that. I've had many people say, I hope you guys do that again. That kind of thing. So, but I'm not the mover and the seconder. The mover and seconder is McConkey and Austin. So we have some options here. Do you like to just receive the report and call it a day? Do you want to, instead of putting dollar figures in, we could eliminate the second paragraph and just go be received, and that Celebrate Spring Water become an annual event to be held in the second last Saturday of June, and then we can sort out dollars later on. So, Deputy Mayor Allen.
I'd like to see the second paragraph removed, but I don't think we should be committing it to an annual event. I think we should commit it to next year's event, but not an annual event thereafter, because you're committing a future council. But I think there should be mention of the fact that further research by staff will be done as to possibilities of sponsorship and flushing out what next year's celebration could look like, and that'll be reviewed at budget time.
As a matter of fact, there's some suggested wording pending budget approval anyway in this. So, can I read something and then people can, and I'll go to, first of all, the mover and seconder. And the report from the Special Events and Recreation Coordinator regarding Celebrate Spring Water's signature event day is September 6, 2017 to be received, and that Celebrate Spring Water is
Be considered for
be considered for 2018, and we can keep the second last Saturday of June because that worked out very well.
And staff create a report.
And staff report back.
Yeah, staff report back on potential
Yeah.
costs and sponsorship.
Sorry?
I can accept that as the mover,
Okay.
because it's not to be considered, it's to be held. And the budget will be determined. We're going to hold an event, and we're going to determine the budget. So if you don't want an event right now, then you can not vote for this. But I'm the mover. That's why I put my hand up on this one, and I get to say how I want it worded as the mover.
Okay, we need an amendment, and I'll have the clerk work with you on the wording for the amendment to the original resolution. Madam Clerk?
Yes, just due to the conversation, we would require an actual amendment that would be voted on by council. Whether it goes forward or not, then back to the main motion. So whoever would be proposing an amendment to the original motion, that's when it would be proposed at this time.
Okay, so one amendment, I guess, was proposed, Deputy Mayor Allen, of removing the second paragraph. And I guess the amendment, would we deal with his first?
You dealing with amendment first?
Yeah, we always have to deal with the amendment first, so we'll deal with the amendment and see where that goes. Is that the correct way of doing it? So, okay, so we'll work with your language first for the end, oh, no, actually, that's the original motion. Yes,
Do
Councillor
we even have to deal with this? Like, from what the CO said, this is for budget purposes, so can we just defer this tonight? And talk about it at budget, or do we have to decide on it tonight?
May I speak?
Actually, I think what we're trying to do is provide some direction, and it will be considered, because the terminology was considered for the 2018, so at least it stays on the table, because it was suggested may just come right off. Deputy Mayor Allen.
But I think the wording in the second paragraph wasn't just considered, it was allocating 39,500 as part of the Rec Parks and Properties Operations budget. So it was pigeonholing 39,500 in that budget for 2018, which I would suggest at this point in time is premature.
Councillor McConkey.
What I didn't agree on the wording is that you said that it would be, the event would be considered for next year. I feel that what we've heard at this table is that we all feel that there should be an event next year. It's just how much we're going to put towards it, and that will be determined at budget time. So I believe that the motion can be changed to that as long as that we're all agreeing, but you said to be considered, and I do not want it a consideration because I want staff to already start using their brain and thinking, yeah, we're going forward. We're going to start to think about things. So when it comes to budget time, they can come in with a better budget and proposal of how they're going to operate.
I'll have the clerk read the amendment.
The amendment reads as follows. So it was moved by Deputy Mayor Allen and seconded by Councillor Ritchie, that the motion now before council be amended as follows, deleting the second paragraph, and that the third paragraph be amended as follows, that Celebrate Springwater be planned for 2018, subject to budget approval, and that staff report back to council regarding potential options.
Okay, so we'll, Councillor, okay, if we have any questions, Councillor Austin?
I noticed you left out to be held the second last Saturday of June. Did you still want to include that?
No, we can leave it out, but I think we can. Okay, you've heard the amendment. We're voting on the amendment. Everybody in favor of the amendment? Carried. And now we go back to the main motion. Do I just say as amended? That the report from the Special Events and Recreation Coordinator regarding Celebrate Springwater's signature event day, September 2nd, 2017, be received, and that Celebrate Springwater be planned for 2018, the staff report back, subject to, for 2018, subject to budget approval, and that staff report back to council regarding potential options. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Very good discussion. Okay, let's move on to fire services to get something on the, oh, yes, 9.7, the automatic aid. I need a mover and a seconder. Richie? Austin? We'll be considering that the report from Fire Chief Gavet regarding entering into an automatic aid and technical rescue agreements dated September 6, 2017 be received, that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreements. So I'll turn for questions and comments. Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor French. I had a very informative discussion with our fire chief, so thank you for that. When I first read the report, I had a lot of questions. I just want to make it clear we're not accepting some of the things that are in here. It's just to sign an agreement with mutual aid. But one of the things I would like to suggest is that possibly our CAO and maybe the fire chief meet with the city of Barrie, because in 2019, they're increasing the fee by 83%, and that seems kind of significant, and I would like to know the justification for that. There's other things in the report that suggest the township of Springwater would be purchasing an aerial fire truck and the technical rescue for ice rescues on Nor Lake and so on. Obviously, I don't agree with any of those things, but that's not what this report's about. It's about signing an agreement with the city of Barrie. So if the rest of council's on board and the CAO and the fire chief would be able to meet with the city of Barrie, I think that would be advantageous.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Councillor McConkey?
Thank you. I was just wanting to know, through the mayor to the chief, when will the mutual aid be up for then ESSA? Will we be seeing a report soon to renegotiate that, or is it not up for renewal yet?
Chief Gavet?
Thank you, Worship. To Councillor McConkey. Basically, it's not up for renewal at this time. However, the one with the City of Barrie is. I did speak with the chief of ESSA a couple of weeks ago, and they've been very kind to us. In fact, until I called them, I had a little regret afterwards. They'd forgotten to bill us for this year, and now they will be submitting an invoice. But basically, they keep their rates pretty low because historically they don't really have to respond to our area much, if at all. So I don't anticipate we'll see any Barrie-type increases with the Township of ESSA.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Just for clarification, can you pick certain components, or is it all or none, basically? So, and are we fixed on these rates and increases in each of those components for each of those years from 18 through to 22?
Chief Gavet?
Thank you, Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor. Yes, you could certainly choose to participate in the automatic aid, aerial and or technical rescue components. These are services that we currently provide under contract with the City of Barrie to our residents. So I would imagine a fairly robust communications plan with the residents of Springwater would need to occur if you were to cease providing any of these services, and there may be some legal ramifications for doing so.
Just follow on, thank you. So these are base fees, is my understanding, and then per incident you pay, is that correct? And Can you comment on why the percentage increases generally are so high going forward?
Chief Gavay?
Thank you, Worship. Forgive me, I forget the first part of your question, if I can answer the second part very quickly. I was really trying to wrap my head around this, based on my experience in other places. Typically I look at price increases based on collective agreements. As you know, City of Barrie is 100% career staff. But I had kind of an epiphany as I was reading it. No, I'd have to confirm this with Chief Boys. 500 a year increase, I think, is a nice round number, and I think that's where you saw that number come in. And because of the increased cost of aerial apparatus and training and certification of the aerial device, I think 1,500 a year was a pretty good number for that when they were coming up with their figures.
The first part of the question was, on top of this, do you have to pay an additional per incident occurrence amount?
Chief Gavay?
Thank you. Yes and no. So with our automatic aid agreement that we currently have, which we use frequently to cover areas that are quite a distance away from the nearest fire station, that's just a flat fee. However, the technical rescue agreement and the aerial, basically the term standby agreement, standby is a misnomer, it's really a retainer. So basically you pay to have the option to use them. But as I alluded to before, they are a career force, and backfilling stations, if we use their people and paying for the resources that we use, meals, etc., we have to pay for that on a per incident basis.
Other questions? Councillor Austin?
Thank you, Mayor French. Could I ask the clerk to bring up the third document under 9.7? It's automatic aid, Barrie. I just have some questions about the map, just for understanding. Where's the question? Right. It's not easy to see, but I see some sections highlighted. So just underneath where it says Township of Oromodonti, there's a long skinny rectangle section, and then a triangular section just below that. And then there's an area which covers Midhurst and to your left, and then an area that is over in Councillor McConkey's ward. So those are the only. Is it true that those are the only? Through you, Mayor French, to Fire Chief Gavay. Are those the only areas that this agreement is covering? Is that what it says?
Chief Gavay?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, as Councillor Austin alluded to, this is the fire response zone map. So basically the areas that have that dotted line around them pertain to the mutual aid fire response. So as per the Malfara conversation that we had before, they would go out on County Road 90. They would also go up 400 to Forbes, 93 to Brown Road, and also cover off St. Vincent. Those areas would be the only parts they would respond to under that part of the agreement. However, the aerial agreement and the technical rescue sections, those apply to the entire township.
My only kind of guidance I would like to see, I like the idea of having CEO Brindley and Chief Gavay have a chat, maybe with the Barrie CAO and their chief, because you use the terminology retainer. Having lots of experience, when I give my lawyer $5,000 retainer, he starts deducting hourly from what he used. If this is a retainer, I have less of a problem with it, because the odds are we may exceed that amount over the period of years, so we get our money's worth. But it's not really a retainer. They want that money just so we can call them. Is that not correct? So it really is not a retainer. It's a standby fee. And my only recommendation to the mover and the seconder would be if there is a desire for our CAO and our fire chief to have a chat with them, if there could be any discussion of changing the standby fee to retainer, as I understand a retainer. I don't know if there's any question or comment on that. I'd feel more comfortable with the price increases, and I think we've all asked questions. The reality is there's the reason I think it should be a retainer is because Barry's not bought equipment because we have a need. We're using their equipment when it's available. I could see if they had to go buy one piece of equipment, because we might call, and then I would actually probably agree to the standby fee. So that's my take on it. I think these should be considered retainers, and as whatever their hourly rates are, when they're used, it's deducted from that, and then it gets into us giving them more money after they've used up the retainers. So I don't know if anybody's got any thoughts or comments on that. Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor. I do agree, and that's why I brought it forward. I was just wondering if there was a rush or a deadline to sign this agreement, or if we could give the CAO and our fire chief a chance to go and have these discussions and report back before we agree to whatever we're supposed to be agreeing to here.
Chief Gavay or CO Brindley, does this need to be signed immediately, or what's the time frame on it?
Thank you, Your Worship, to Councillor Hanna. So basically, this agreement runs from 2018 through 2022. So I would imagine that provided it was signed and returned to the City of Barrie in triplicate no later than the close of business before Christmas, that would allow for sufficient time for discussion to take place and further information to be provided to Council, provided the CAO agrees with that statement.
Councillor McConkey.
I was just wondering if this is standard protocol, because if we're going to go back and say, hey, no, this isn't a retainer and we want you to start to bill this way, but if it's done in all municipalities this way, then I don't want to rock the boat and them saying, no, we're not going to look after you, because I need my residents looked after. It's my residents that it's impacting, so I just want to make sure we're following a proper protocol.
I can concur with that. CEO Brindley?
No, thank you, and to all council. I'm trying not to get lost in the percentages, because when you look at the actual contract pricing, it's not a lot of money. And for both, in the case of you're talking about ESSA and Barrie, there's many times where they send equipment up here where we never get the bill, to be kind of honest with council. So although, I mean, I'm more than welcome to, I'd like to actually go and meet the new CAO for Barrie and meet the chief, because I have met him before, and we should encourage that relationship to make sure these numbers don't stray too far. But in the scheme of things, these are only ups by not that much. Mind you, the aerial apparatus is a lot, and the chief has identified probably some of the rationale there. I think a discussion needs to be happen, and let's have that and maybe report back to council, because the contract's 218. But at the same time, I think we're getting lost in the percentage when overall, for us to provide these services here, the annual maintenance of an aerial apparatus, this fee pales in comparison to even trying to just certify that equipment on an annual basis. So I hope council doesn't get lost too much in the percentages when it's a 500 here or 1,000 here. That's my caution.
And I don't think there is concern in that, but since the agreement is January 1st, 2018, would it be worthwhile for us referring it back to staff? And without any further, just refer it back to staff, and possibly you following through its conversation with them and come back and provide a report back? Is everybody comfortable with that? Okay. That the report from Fire Chief Gavay regarding entering into automatic aid and technical rescue agreements dated September 6, 2017 be received, and that the matter be referred back to staff to report back to council. Does that work for everybody? Yeah. All those in favor? Carried. So moving on to the next one, it's a little more detail on the equipment and that. I need a mover and a seconder in time, but rescue 59 refurbishment replacement. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Alan Austin. I'll just read what we're going to be dealing with. that the report from the Director of Fire and Emergency Services, Fire Chief, regarding Rescue 59 refurbishment replacement dated September 6, 2017 be received, and that $250,000 from Project 2019-07 Tanker Rescue Truck T25 be allocated to Project 2017-11 for a new walk-in rescue or stock demonstrator rescue truck and be fully funded from the Fire Reserve, and that the Fire Chief be authorized to start the process to acquire a new walk-in rescue or stock demonstrator walk-in rescue that meets fire services needs, and should a stock demonstrator be found, that the Director of Finance be authorized to issue a deposit to the vendor in order to hold the unit, and that the 6-year capital plan be readjusted to show the tanker 25 replacement on the original schedule of 2019. Questions? Deputy Mayor Allen.
I would ask Chief Gavay to sort of give an overview of how this transpired, this change, and what is it that we thought we'd be able to get, but turned out not to work out. If you could just provide an overview, please.
Chief Gavay.
Thank you, Worship. Before my arrival, the township had contracted out to a consultant to work on and update the fire master plan. As part of the fire master plan, it was identified that this existing rescue truck in Elmvale basically be refurbished. However, that wasn't quite in keeping with the NFPA standard on refurbishing fire trucks, which basically said that you should do that at the 15-year mark, which would have meant that we would have refurbished it in 2011. It did come up for consideration in the budget last year, but although it was a priority, it wasn't as high as some other stuff that was being worked on by my predecessors. However, we did decide in budget of 2017 to basically follow the recommendations of the Fire Master Plan and try to refurbish this unit. The unit in question is a 1996 HME truck. That was the manufacturer of the cab and chassis, and dependable emergency vehicles put a rescue body or big toolbox on the back. I've since writing this report found out that the rescue body itself is actually a 1988, not a 1996 as previously thought. We went out to RFP with the funds that we had available for the refurbishment through the 2017 budget process to see if we could find a vendor who was a reputable, recognized, long-established emergency service vehicle provider and modifier to get them to provide a new cab and chassis and also to renovate or refurbish the rescue body in accordance with Ontario national standards. Two companies were actually interested in the work, the first of which refused to submit a bid, basically because they said that they thought the end product would be unsafe. And the second proponent, or the only actual proponent that submitted a proposal, had indicated previously that the work would likely fall within our budget. However, when we got their proposal back, it was tens of thousands of dollars more than our budget, and they said that until they could get the rescue box removed from the truck, they wouldn't be able to ascertain what the actual cost would be. So basically, you could be looking at up to $300,000 to refurbish a box that's 1988, and typically most emergency vehicle parts don't last past 20 years in service in accordance with national standards and guidelines. So in a nutshell, we find ourselves further hampered by the fact that the steering box needs to be replaced, but we can't buy a part for it. So we've poured, or our mechanic has poured a liquid substance into the steering box to hopefully stop the leak and to get it to limp along for another 2 or 3 months. However, it is anticipated that probably by 2018, we'll actually have to remove this unit from service because we can't keep it on the road. Being very aware of some of the capital challenges that we are going to be facing in the coming years, and through discussions with the Director of Finance, who was the acting CAO at the time of the report, was identified that a project which we had accelerated, namely the Tank 25 replacement from Station 2, which was originally slated for 2019, should be pushed back to 2019, and that we should use some of the funds allocated for that truck to fill in the blanks and basically provide for the purchase of a new stock demonstrator or perhaps even used vehicle in the amount of $450 as opposed to the original $225.
Councillor Anna.
Thank you, Mayor French, and again, I had a very informative discussion with our fire chief, and I appreciate it. I've also done a considerable amount of research on this, and from the different people I've spoke to, and what I've been able to understand is that a rescue truck is simply a rescue truck and more for transportation of personnel. And to me, I think it would be more prudent, and while it might cost a bit more money, instead of buying a rescue truck that is simply just basically for rescue purposes, we should be buying a tanker truck that we can fight fires with as well and put rescue equipment into that vehicle, and that would provide the fire service with a new pumper truck that could be used for rescue services versus just a rescue truck that can't be used for much more other than rescues, if you like. And I can give you a lot of history of other fire services, if you like. I'm told that Barrie no longer even has a rescue truck. I'm reading the report, I believe this says will bring us up to 3 rescue trucks. I'm not certain if that's correct or not. Maybe the chief could answer that.
Chief Cavey.
Certainly, thank you, Your Worship. So basically, we only have one rescue truck presently. We've moved towards rescue pumpers, which is certainly my preference. It's just they're a lot more expensive than buying even a new walk-in rescue, and that certainly would be my preference. However, again, we're kind of a little limited by budget, especially with a renovation in addition to Station 2, Yard 1, where most of our fire reserve has been taken up for ours and public works and recreation's temporary use of parts of the building until a new fire station is built. If council remembers back to the 2017 budget, I kind of drove my stake into the ground and basically said, let's not replace a rescue truck that we had at Station 2, let's buy a rescue pumper and basically replace Tank 25 with it. And certainly if the funds were made available to me, that would be my preference. Not only because it does more than one thing from a firefighting standpoint, but from a taxpayer's perspective, though it's more expensive, you get full credit for having that truck because it's a Class A pumper, if you will. So it fights fires and it carries all your rescue equipment. Whereas a walk-in rescue truck, when the fire underwriters come around, they'll say, nice new rescue truck, but your taxpayers aren't going to get any insurance credit when we do our new study.
Thank you, Chief, and I understand too, in fairness to the Chief, that this report was brought forward asking for the rescue truck, one, because the rescue truck needs to be put out of service because of its condition, and also because the committee that the Chief, I guess, chairs, the committee thought that replacing the rescue truck was the way to go because it was a rescue truck we were putting out of service. But I would strongly support not doing this, but getting a pumper truck that can be used for both and we get the benefit for, and we don't necessarily always have to go out and buy new. I'm sure there's other vehicles out there that we could buy that are in probably good condition or second-hand or whatever that would still be better than what we have currently. So I'm not supporting the rescue truck, but I would support something that included a tanker that could be used as a rescue vehicle.
Councillor McConkey.
I support what Councillor Hannah's saying, that we get more bang for the buck, and I guess it would help the people in the area knowing that you've got a tanker of water with you as well. What I would like to ask though is, can you buy an off-the-shelf, like would it be ready this year? Like if you have this rescue truck, where is this rescue truck that we're replacing? One question. And then how long would it take to get a rescue pumper on site, and how big is it? Because I think that the reason for not having it at Station 1 is we were told about the size, but I do understand there's different size rescue pumpers, so I just want to make sure, do we have the place to store it if we go a rescue pumper, and how long would it take, and would that suffice you to wait?
Chief Cavey.
Thank you, Worship. I'm very fortunate that I've worked in a wide variety of places with different financial abilities. So I'm quite used to buying stock or demonstrator trucks and even used trucks that are, worthwhile for the municipality. We certainly have room for it. The truck that, this would be replacing is based in Elmvale. We're very fortunate that the space we have available to us in Elmvale certainly exceeds our needs. So it would be no trouble putting any kind of truck in that station.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
So with the pumper facility, what would be the range of prices for demonstrators, new, used, that might be at today's prices, that might be in the ballpark over and above the 450,000?
Chief Gavay?
Thank you, Worship. We've been relatively unlucky, having anticipated this conversation. I've been looking for a couple of months because that's how long I've had the opportunity to be working with this report based on a summer schedule. There really hasn't been a lot. There are a couple of trucks available in Colorado. One's about to come off the line, brand new. But it's not going to be a rescue pumper, so you have immediate availability of a demo rescue truck. As far as a rescue pumper, there are some available. However, I would probably encourage the municipality to consider buying a lightly used lease return, from one of those richer departments that leases its equipment and returns it every 5 years in the States, because you're likely to have some availability for that. However, if you were to actually custom build and order a truck, you're looking at 12 to 18 months. I don't think we have that much time. And you're looking at probably $650,000 and up, depending on your needs. So before I came, you would have had a discussion about Pump 21, which is our actual current rescue pumper, which Council saw in the fall of last year, shortly after I arrived. That's a commercial cab, so it's cheaper than the custom truck, which you see, City of Barrie, for instance, driving around because of its narrower streets and more parked vehicles. Those tend to be very expensive new. Probably you're looking at 750,000. I think ultimately, if I were to get permission from council to go sole source a new stock demonstrator or lightly used truck that would meet our needs, bearing in mind we're not New York, we're not running it many hours a day, I'm pretty sure I could do that for somewhere between $450 and $650 after tax rebates and import fees and all that good stuff, if indeed we have to import one. The trouble is, there's just not a lot of stock on the market right now.
I think Councillor Austin?
No, I had the same question that Deputy Mayor Allen had.
Deputy Mayor Allen?
Well, I think from the discussion, I certainly would support doing that because we do need to have the pumper facility. So I think I would like to see more exploration done at really the possible sources of that sort of product and costs, and then we'd review it again and make a decision.
Any other questions? Chief Gavay?
Thank you, Worship. So again, just sort of getting back to the urgency of replacing this unit, I don't think that we necessarily as a department have the luxury of going away to research more. I think I would recommend what I've done in other places before is to go and find something, hold it on a small deposit, and then come back and report to council and say, this is what we found, this meets your needs, may we buy it, yes or no? That would be my recommendation.
Okay. So I guess you would want some direction of a number. And what is a comfortable number you would have falling under the criteria of used, demo, slightly used, so you could be comfortable making a deposit, and obviously it would give you some bargaining ability if the vendor knew that you were serious. And so what number would you want us to put on a resolution?
Thank you, Worship. Somewhat like Councillor Hanna, I'm not addicted to the new truck smell, but I think that, we need to have the ability to go find the right truck at the lowest price. So I would respectfully request a limit of up to $650,000, bearing in mind that I have no intention of spending that if I don't have to, or recommending that council spends it if it doesn't have to. Because again, though this is a critical truck within the fleet, it's not going to be running a lot, so we can't afford to buy something that has some miles on it.
Councillor McConkey?
Sorry, but I do have a question on that price because we had 525,000, I think it was 550 that we were allocating for the pumper down in my end. So I would think that that should suffice the amount rather than the 600, but unless that price was wrong.
Chief Gavay?
price was absolutely right. Councillor, you're 100% correct. The downside is you got a great deal last year on that truck. You saved many tens of thousands of dollars. I think if you hadn't have piggybacked onto whatever contract it was through Chief Shaw, you probably would have been paying closer to $600,000 for that.
Follow up?
So why didn't we get that truck? No, I thought, like in the report, we're talking about using the budget from the truck, like, there's a rescue tanker required down in, I think it's Station 1. So, and I might have the station wrong. But in the report, it talks about using that budget from the one that we were going to buy. So that's the one I'm talking about. We're still using a 525 allocation there.
Could you clarify, Chief Gavay?
Certainly. Basically, similar to the conversation that happened around, the Clearview truck. At the time that we were looking at putting money into capital replacement, there were some deals on the market. Though the US dollar exchange rate has not changed too much, I don't have any confidence that I'm still going to find something at that price. And as every month passes, the trucks seem to be getting more expensive. As to why we're not pursuing the Tank 25 project right now, it was advanced 2 years to 2017 because we had other trucks to buy in 2019, and it was felt we could pad things out a little bit, and as far as, the actual years of acquisition. However, the reason we haven't done anything with it this year is not only because of the price, but because I have nowhere to put it. The facility at Station 2 in Midhurst is such that it will not fit in that station. And, the hope had been that the renovation and addition would have occurred long before today.
Councillor Hanna?
Thank you. Am I correct and believe that this, the funding for this would come from fire reserves? And I guess if that's accurate, through to our Director of Finance, is there any options for DCs to help pay for this as well?
Director Schmidt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanna. I believe in the 2017 budget, we had contemplated that if we were replacing, or if we were replacing Tank 25, that it is in our actual DCs, 50% funded from DCs. I would have to have a further conversation with our fire chief to get a better understanding of what we will be purchasing now and whether or not there would be an opportunity for DCs to be applicable. So I think we could report back as well on that. I think if council is to give the chief authorization to move forward with putting a deposit on a particular vehicle with an upset limit, we would report back to council, obviously with that information, and provide funding at that time, funding options at that time for council to consider.
That would be my motion, further to what the Chief and Director of Finance have suggested, as long as it's clear that we're buying a pumper rescue and not a rescue truck.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Allen?
Yeah, that's sort of been partially answered, but I would just like to see a recast of the 6-year capital plan with respect to these. How would it, but that'll be part of the report that you're talking about, so that's my answer that I was looking for. Thanks.
Okay, now, let's assume we come up and agree to kind of go for the rescue tanker combination. Pumper rescue. Is there funds available in reserves, or where do we go from a financing perspective to find the extra $400,000?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council, you may recall that in the 2017 capital budget, there were 2 vehicles contemplated, which are the Rescue 59, which is what we're talking about, as well as the tanker. So between those 2 purchases, we had contemplated spending over $460,000 out of the fire reserve. So the intent is that we wouldn't be pursuing both of those anymore. We'd be pursuing one, and hence there's approximately $460,000 available out of the fire reserve.
Okay, so I think we have agreement. It was moved by Alan and second by Austin. And so how would we like to massage this resolution? Because we're going to provide, do we have to do an amendment or can we change the resolution? Madam Clerk? Okay, so this is an amendment, and the amendment would be, and maybe clerk can assist me, that we delete the second paragraph, modify the next paragraph, the fire chief be authorized to start the process to acquire a new walk-in, or actually, pumper, it would take pumper rescue vehicle. Actually, we probably should say new stock demonstrator or used walk-in pumper rescue.
Not walk-in.
Okay, we dropped the walk-in, the pumper rescue that meets fire services, and should a stock demonstrator or used be found, that the Director of Finance be authorized to issue a deposit to the vendor in order to hold the unit. And that staff report back on financing options and revision to the 6-year capital plan, and the 6-year capital plan be readjusted.
We don't have an upward limit of price there.
Yeah, we need to put yes, we need to put the upset limit of 650,000, and maybe put it up here, not to exceed.
Canadian.
So we're putting the upset limit, meets fire services needs not to exceed 650,000. We're putting that in.
Because he's looking at US, so he said Canadian.
And those are US, or Canadian dollars we're using? Yes, just to confirm, because we do deal in Canadian currency. Chief Gavay?
Thank you, Worship. Just for clarification, it may be that we end up paying in US dollars, but it will be coming from Canadian account.
Good. So, yeah, we're approving up to 650,000 Canadian, just in case. So that is the amendment. Is everybody comfortable with the amendment?
Are you going to put Canadian there? It's not in there.
We deal in Canadian currency, but we will put it in there. Canadian dollars. Okay, is the amendment acceptable? All those in favor? Okay, carried unanimously. Okay, so now we go back to the main motion, and I'll try and read it, and we'll may have to take a little bit of wordsmithing here. Moved by, actually, who moved the amendment? I didn't ask for a mover and a seconder. Hannah?
Well, in the main motion, right?
No, but I'm going to come back to the main motion. So can I have a seconder? Councilor Ritchie, do you want to? Yeah, okay. So the amendment was moved by Hannah and Ritchie, and now we're back to the main motion as amended that we'll read. Moved by Allen, second by Austin, the report from the Director of Finance and Emergency Services Fire Chief regarding Rescue 59 refurbishment replacement dated September 6, 2017 be received, and that the fire chief be authorized to start the process to acquire a new or stock demonstrator or used rescue pumper that meets fire services needs not to exceed $650,000 Canadian, and should a stock demonstrator used be found, that the Director of Finance be authorized to issue the deposit to the vendor in order to hold the unit, and that staff report back on financing options and revision to the 6-year capital plan be readjusted. I think we'll have to clean up the wording, but that's the intent. So everybody in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And now we'll move on to 9.9, the kind of rehabilitation of Yonge Street, and I need a mover and a seconder. Ritchie, Austin. Just so you know, we're going to be discussing that the report from the Director of Public Works dated September 6, 2017 regarding the tender award for the Yonge Street South Rehabilitation and Queen Street East water main be received, and option A, that the tender for the Yonge Street South Rehabilitation and the Queen Street East water main PW-10-2017 be awarded to Coco Paving in the amount of $1,109,776.49, with the proposed funding contained in the report approved and the necessary documents executed by the corporation's duly authorized signing officers, or that the tender be canceled and be retendered in 2018, subject to budget approval. So questions, Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor French. I just wondered, the approved capital budget was $700,000, so why was there a discrepancy of $250,000 in this? Can I understand that a little bit better? And what would be the potential benefit of waiting to rebid this in 2018 when we find that prices just seem to keep increasing, is my understanding.
Director Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor French. Through you to Deputy Mayor Allen. I believe that the discrepancy was a case of this was budgeted a few years ago and then deferred. What it is, it's not a complete replacement of curb and sidewalk, it's select areas. So obviously in the past couple of years, other areas have become further deteriorated, so there was more curb and sidewalk required to be replaced. In addition, as a proactive measure, we camera'd, CCTV'd the storm sewers. There's a section of storm sewer at Stone Street that is broken, that requires replacement, so there's additional cost there that wasn't budgeted for in the original budget. There really is no benefit to wait to 2018, because at $1.1 million, then there's likely a project that we have slated for next year that would have to be deferred to future years.
Just
Follow up.
And do we have the reserve to be able to absorb this $250,000 increase?
Director Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Deputy Mayor Allen. As indicated in the report, it does indicate that of the $250,000 required, essentially $150,000 plus would be required, would be an additional requirement from debt, and then another 96 or 97,000 would need to come from the Water Reserve Fund. Again, it's issuing more debt and also drawing more funds from our Water Reserve Fund.
Just one further clarification, that would be internally financed debt as opposed to external debt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor Allen, it would be external debt.
Okay. Councillor Hanna.
Thank you. Through to, I guess, our Director of Finance, there's infrastructure grants available. Would this qualify, and could we apply for some of the provincial infrastructure grants that are out there right now to proceed with this project?
Director Schmidt.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanna. You're correct, there are infrastructure grants out there. You'll see later tonight, there's a grant that staff is recommending. The reason why we're not recommending a road-related project for the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, the last 3 years, I believe, we've requested funding for road-related projects and have been unsuccessful. For that particular grant program, what they're hinging the criteria on, that it has to be critical health and safety related matters. And so I guess staff don't feel that this particular project has the same level of critical health and safety as what we're proposing with regards to the Ant Mills water storage. As for other infrastructure grants that are out there, again, we can keep our eye on other potential ones that are coming up. I'm not aware of any others at this particular time, but again, that is always something that we could take a look at and not have to incur the additional debt. But as Director Coleman has mentioned, not proceeding with this, I'm not sure that we're going to see a cost savings if we defer it. So,
Thank you. If I just may respond. So I know it's a bit of work for staff to apply for these grants, but with a water main now that seems to be in jeopardy, to me that would be a health and safety issue maybe that we could lean on a little bit to try to get some work out of the province, if you like, for the grant. And if we got Jim Wilson on board and helped us massage it a bit, if it's not a lot of work for staff, I would certainly support applying for a grant for this as well.
CEO Brindley.
Thank you, Mayor French. Through to Councillor Hanna. There's an actual budget upset limit to the grant, and we could not do both projects. We apply for one project or the other project. And when we look at health and life safety, providing water and water quality and water availability to Ant Mills meets that criteria rather than aging infrastructure within this project. So the other one meets the criteria better, and we can't apply for both.
I saw the $2 million upset, I believe it was, in the report, but the water main thing would be only a couple $100,000 just to repair the water main, and I don't think that would put us over the $2 million unless I'm wrong. But anyway, it's just a conversation I wanted to have.
Deputy Mayor Allen.
Thank you. What would be the timing of starting and completing this, please?
Director Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor French. We'd like to proceed as soon as possible. I think the completion date in the contract is October 31st. I'd have to recheck, but I think it's around the 1st of November, just so we can get hot asphalt down before it gets too cold.
Councillor Austin.
If the construction or the project goes through, will traffic be allowed to continue during construction?
Director Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor French. Traffic will be maintained until such point as they'll have to connect the water main in the intersection of Yonge and Queen Street, which would probably require a one-day closure with notification, obviously, outside the village limits to direct traffic around.
Other questions? Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Mayor French. The Queen Street East, when we redo that water main up to Patterson Street, are we going to have to repave that again? Redo it all over again? repave that stretch?
Director Coleman?
Thank you, Mayor French. Yes, it will require asphalt as well. The water main is under the road.
And how long has it been? Is it 5 years since we did Queen Street East? And when we did it, that water main should have been redone then. And so we're going back again and redoing this. And the problem that we're having is in the winter time, when the frost gets down there, we've repaired that water main how many times? 3, 4 times? And I've seen our men out there 8 o'clock at night, water all over the place. This should have been fixed the last time we did it, but you know what? We can't cry with spilt milk, but this time we're going back, we're going to fix it right. And there's some extra costs there on that as well too. So you got to put a new water main and repave it. So, and it needs to be done. So I support this 100%.
Thank you. Any further questions? I think the point was made that, I guess it was done when it first proposed many years ago, is it be canceled. So the mover and seconder, are you preferring option A? Councillor Ritchie?
Yes, Mayor French, option A for me.
Okay. So I will read the resolution. That the report from the Director of Public Works dated September 6, 2017 regarding the tender award for the Yonge Street South Rehabilitation and Queen Street East Water Main be received, and that the tender for the Yonge Street South Rehabilitation and Queen Street East Water Main PW-10-2017 be awarded to Coco Paving, Inc. in the amount of $1,109,776.49, with the proposed funding contained in the report approved and the necessary documents executed by the corporation's duly authorized signing officers. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, moving on to action reports, final acceptance, and I need a mover and a seconder. And final acceptance of Phase 1, Allen and McConkey. And just so you know what we're going to be discussing, the report from the Director of Public Works regarding the final acceptance for the Black Creek Subdivision Phase 1 be received, that the final acceptance of the Black Creek Subdivision Phase 1 be approved, that the Director of Public Works be authorized to sign the certificate of final acceptance. Open for discussion and questions. Do I see any? Councilor McConkey.
Through the mayor to Director Coleman, I just wanted to know, I know Ainley is our engineer on record, so they're saying that we confirm from our recent reviews that municipal service have been completed and all deficiencies have now been corrected. Do we also align with that? And do we have record of the deficiencies? Because I just go back to our, and we go back to roads and stuff like that. I was just aware that sometimes when someone's doing a paving, if you know that someone does a complaint, you can go back. So if we know the deficiencies that Ainley's approving, and it was a deficiency that came in the future, do we have any recourse to go back?
Director Coleman.
Thank you, Mayor French. I was actually involved in the final inspection of both Phase 1 and 2. There was no asphalt deficiencies. They were very minor deficiencies. There was still some filter cloth in catch basins. There was one sewer that needed to be cleaned. Very minor deficiencies. Those were rectified. So this final acceptance is a final acceptance. It's now ours.
Any other questions? Okay, all those in favor? Carried. And the next one, now we're talking about Phase 2. I need a mover and a seconder. McConkey, Hannah. That the report from the Director of Public Works regarding the final acceptance for the Black Creek Subdivision Phase 2 be received, that the final acceptance of Black Creek Subdivision Phase 2 be approved, that the Director of Public Works be authorized to sign the certificate of final acceptance. Again, open to questions. And I guess maybe since Councillor McConkey asked the question before, were you part of the final inspection, Director Coleman?
Yes, Mayor French, I was. Both were done actually on the same day.
And you have no concerns or issues of deficiencies?
That's correct, I have no concerns.
Okay, with that in mind, all those in favor? Carried. And moving on to basically the release of securities, can I have a mover and a seconder? McConkey, Hannah. Just so you know what we're going to be talking about. That the report from the Director of Public Works regarding the security reductions for Black Creek Estates development dated September 6, 2017 be received. That $457,381.87 be returned to the developer, and that $190,517.55 be held for Phase 3 and the wastewater treatment plant expansion. Open to questions and discussion. Okay, seeing none, I know we're returning this money, so some of the outstanding issues in the Black Creek subdivision, odor and all that, have they been resolved to everyone's satisfaction? Was that part of the holdback? Maybe CEO Brindley wants to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is definitely part of the holdback. I don't think it's being affected yet because did we, during my absence, I don't know if we got the certificate of approval from MOE. We're waiting for a final approval of MOE certificate to do the amendment to the plant, but we have included in the holdback more than enough money to pay for those works.
So the $190,000 is more than enough to resolve outstanding issues? Okay. Okay, with that in mind, all those in favor? Carried. So this is regarding the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, so can I have a mover and a seconder to get it on the table? Alan and Richie? That the report from the Director of Public Works and the Director of Planning Services regarding the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund dated September 6, 2017 be received, that staff be directed to prepare and submit the Anton Mills Water Supply System Improvements Project for funding under the top-up application component of the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreements. Questions? Okay. Councillor Hanna.
Thank you. I just got to go back to my former question. It says here we're allowed to claim $770,000 for this fund, and the road work with the water main in Elmville was $1.1 million, and our upset is $2 million. I'm sure I'm probably reading it wrong, but I'm just, again, have to ask the question, if our upset is $2 million, those two totals don't come to $2 million. So I know you can answer the question for me, and if you would, I'd appreciate it.
CEO Brindley or Director Schmidt?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hanna. So you're correct, there is an upset limit of $2 million. However, the program, the way the OCIF program works is that there's a formula component. And so we've gotten that portion. You don't have to apply for that. And then there's the additional $770,000 that we can apply for, but we're not guaranteed to get. And so and the way the program works, as the CAO had mentioned, through the application-based program, you can only apply for one project. We're applying for the Anton Mills, or we're suggesting to apply for the Anton Mills, because the criteria for this application-based program really hinges on critical health and safety matters. So, yes, water main is critical health and safety. I think based on what staff have prepared for Anton Mills, it probably is a higher priority as it relates to critical health and safety matters, and hence why staff is recommending to proceed with this project.
I don't disagree. I think you're correct. I just didn't understand why we couldn't apply for both when it was less than $2 million.
Director Schmidt, I think, I guess the point is we can only apply for one. And there's a higher probability of the success of the Anton Mills relative to the other project, I think is the answer we keep getting, which is good guidance, okay? Any other questions on this? Oh, Councillor McConkey.
When I think of Ant Mills, I think of it, the subdivision as being rather new. So I was wondering, like, when was this water put in? And now we're spending this much. So, and it makes mention of a developer, something about, I just had it, but where it says based on a developer change or something, it caused a problem. So this is where I get to the fact of we're signing off on subdivision agreements. Like, did the developer cause this issue? And how old is this subdivision? Like, it's a lot of money to be spending on some water supply that I wondered the age of it.
Maybe I'll go to Director of Planning or Director of Public Works. Who would like to comment? Director of Planning, Spagno.
Thank you, Mayor French, to Councillor McConkey. What's referenced in the report is that there was a design change with respect to the storage component of the water system. What has happened over the years is that there has been also a number of changes with respect to water taking provisions from the MOE that have created the deficiency in the system. So the design met engineering standards, but coupled with the change from the MOE, that has compounded the issue and created an issue of deficiency which has to be rectified today. So at the time when the change or the design change was completed, it met design standards, but as changes occurred through time, there was a deficiency that was created with respect to storage of water needed for fire suppression.
Okay. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to FCM funding. Can I have a mover and seconder for this? Austin? McConkey. That the report from the Acting Chief Administrative Officer and Director of Finance regarding the application for Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program grant dated September 6, 2017 be received. The Council directs staff to apply for a grant opportunity from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Municipal Asset Management Program for developing asset management strategies and capacity in Springwater. The Council commits to conducting the following project activities: developing an asset management policy, developing an asset management program maturity assessment, and authorize staff to attend asset management development and training. The Township commits $12,500 from its operating budget toward the cost of this initiative. So maybe I'll open to questions, or would the reason it says Acting Chief Administrative Officer is obviously Director Brindley was away for a bit. So would you like to give us a quick overview, maybe, Director Schmidt, before we kind of get into specific questions?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council. So as you may recall, back earlier this year, FCM, or the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, released information about a new grant program that's available to municipalities. So essentially, we have been in discussions with a third party, the Public Sector Digest, who has had success in applying for this particular funding. And so they, in partnership with the township, we've created this program, if you will, to request funding to help further the township's asset management strategies and to actually build some capacity in Springwater as it relates to asset management. So the funding is up to $50,000 that's eligible. This is the program that we've put together. The idea would be is if we are successful, then we would be proceeding with Public Sector Digest to help assist us in ensuring that this program is delivered. If you are successful, there's essentially an 11-month time frame to get these initiatives completed. So that's essentially what the program is.
Thank you for that. Questions? I think it's obviously a very good initiative. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, moving on for the contract for development charges, and I need a mover and a seconder. Alan? Hannah? The report from the Acting Chief Administrative Officer and Director of Finance regarding award of contract RFP-FIN-05-2017, development charges, background study, and bylaw update, dated September 6, 2017, be received. That Watson and Associates Economists Limited, being the preferred proponent and meeting the terms and conditions of RFP FIN-05-2017, be awarded the contract for consulting services for the township's development charges as background study and bylaw update in the amount of $28,900 exclusive of HST. The mayor and clerk execute the necessary documents with Watson and Associates Economists Limited. Open for discussion and questions. Any questions? Councillor McConkey.
I just want to say that I did read the Barrie DC charge study, and it was excellent, very easy to read, so I'm really sort of happy. I know that we did have other good reports, but it's not, sometimes you need a change, and I think it will be very easy for all of the residents to be able to interpret the documentation.
Councillor Hannah?
Thank you. I support this as well. I just had a question. Would the funding include a training session for council, given that there's been changes to the Development Charges Act and so on? I think it would be beneficial if that did, the costing did include that with their DC study.
Director Schmidt, any comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hannah, I believe there's 6 meetings in total in their proposal, and one of them is an information meeting or an update to council. Should we require additional meetings, I believe the quote they gave me was essentially be upwards to about $2,000, depending on the length of the meeting and who's required to attend. So, but I believe, from what I recall, the proposal did include an information meeting for council.
Any other questions? No, I quite honestly, further to Councillor McConkey said, I went when they did their presentation in Barrie on their development charges, and it was very thorough, very detailed, and I think, as mentioned, in layman's language, which was easy to understand. And so, yes, and certainly Hempson, one of the people that obviously bid on this, they do a great job. They've done a great job for us. But in this particular case, I certainly accept the recommendation, and hopefully we'll be pleased with the outcome of that. So all those in favor? Carried. So now we'll move on to information reports, and we have a number of them here. To get it on the floor, if I can have a mover and a seconder, the report items 10.2 through 10.9 be received as information. Just to get it on the floor, Hannah, Alan, is there any of these that we would like to pull for further consideration, or if there's just simple comments or questions, we can deal with those as we go. Councillor Austin?
10.3, just a quick comment.
Okay, please.
Okay, I just wanted to acknowledge that this was Mayor French's report on attendance at the conference, the Ontario Municipalities Association, or AMO conference in August, and I really appreciated the manner in which the report was written. It was really good reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports on here that we'd like to pull for discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. So now we're going to move on to verbal reports. Official plan update. Director Spagno.
Thank you, Mayor French. Staff is continuing to look through the growth management plan 2017 for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. There are a number of meetings that are scheduled to take place with county representatives, and also future meetings with the ministry to provide staff a little bit of guidance as to how they see our official plan update and growth management strategy proceeding. Staff will be reporting back to council after those meetings have occurred, just to provide some insight as to what those conversations entailed, along with some next steps for council to consider to move the program forward.
And just as a comment on that, I received something today which I forwarded to Director Spagnol, because the county has established a planning advisory committee, and they have some terms of reference, and they have a presentation they're doing to that committee. So I forwarded to that to Director Spagnol, see if it's of any assistance. Okay, economic development updates, Director Spagnol.
Thank you, Mayor French. Just to update council that planning staff will be working with the marketing firm eSolutions to start working on the marketing strategy for the municipality based on the selected firm. We're excited to get moving with that project, and we can start seeing that program start moving forward very shortly.
Thank you. Councillor McConkey.
I'm sorry, I missed a couple economic development meetings due to the appointments, but I do see that a lot of work has been done. And one of it was the computer updates. I wonder if sometime we should be having, especially before the budget, if we should have a review with all of council of how the updates work, so that we can also be ambassadors to get it out to the small businesses if they want to get on there. And the other thing I think why we need a walkthrough of the website, and it's maybe not so much economic development, but it is also, is the community halls. We need to really draw attention to how to book those and make the ease of use. So I'm interested in working and sitting down and going through our website. And I know some of us all have frustrations, and I think if we can sit down with someone in IT or someone, and then, you know, if we need more work next year, we understand what the budget would be.
No, as a matter of fact, I think probably, and maybe we should list it on our items for future consideration. It's interesting because, yeah, it'd be nice to have a discussion on our website. Yeah, and I think we should bring that up there and then have a separate session on that, because we really haven't talked about that. Director Spagnol?
Thank you, Mayor French. I'd just like to invite council to sit down with staff in the planning department to go through the planning pages and the economic development pages, to go through where all that information can be found, so that you can relay that, and we'd be more than happy to sit down with any member of council to direct them to where to go on the website to be able to direct any residents who are interested.
Thank you. And, okay, county updates. And maybe Deputy Mayor Allen can comment. Our next meeting is next week.
Yeah, it's really, we're meeting next week to resume the fall meetings, and that's when we will be trying to get through this motion to have the proposed 2% levy by the county reduced to 1%. So we'll report on the results of that next meeting.
Thank you. So to municipal updates, things that are happening in our various wards. And anybody like to comment? Councillor Hanna.
Thank you, Mayor French, and I better not forget to mention the Midhurst Autumn Fest Fall Fair, Saturday, September the 30th. There will be a lot of local vendors there. Emergency services are there. There's lots of children's activities, entertainment, and food and barbecue. So everybody's welcome in Springwater and wherever.
Thank you. Councillor McConkey.
I'd just like to thank everyone who attended the Grenfell gathering. I was informed that there was about 250 people that have signed in that, and I'd like to thank all of the council members who attended. And it was a great event, and thank you, Chief, for bringing out the fire truck. Grenfell was, they're asking for more now, so it was good to get everyone out.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Allen.
The Hillsdale end of summer extravaganza was a big success. One thing that was rather unique was, instead of the traditional hot dogs, sausages, and hamburgers, we had wood oven pizzas, homemade pizzas, and they were a big hit. I think Councillor Ritchie enjoyed them, and as did I, as did Mayor
They're
French.
like fresh air. There's nothing to them.
It was a very successful event and a beautiful day.
Yeah. Any other comments? Councillor Austin?
I want to mention that we are planning to have some meetings to consider the idea of renewing and improving a winter market, the extension of the farmer's market from the summer, looking at the possibility of a winter market within the community hall in Elmville during the fall, winter, and spring weeks or months. But what we need is more vendors. So I hope to sit down with the staff and some representatives from the vendors sometime next week.
Thank you. Okay. I guess I have a comment, and I'm not sure if it has to move into a notice of motion. Obviously, we had lots of great events around in that, but one particular thing that keeps popping up in the Grenfell area, everybody knows that the Sunnydale Road has been realigned, meeting up with County Road 90, and during the construction period, actually there's been a sensible speed posted, 60 kilometers an hour. And informally, I've suggested to the kind of the director at the county that would it not be a good idea, since people have got used to driving that speed, that maybe they could permanently reduce the speed from just east of Grenfell Road on Sunnydale Road, County Road 40, to the new intersection to County Road 90. I have not got support of that. And I'm not sure if I need a notice of motion. I would like to see us as a council have a resolution supporting the reduction of speed in that area to 60 and simply forward it to the county. And so if that requires, and I'll turn to the clerk, if that requires us doing a notice of motion, I'll be quite happy to do that when it comes time. And we just forward that motion to the, because I know Councillor McConkey has a lot of support for it, and because of farms that have entrances on that have, farmers have always been hit. We've had accidents in the curve, all those kind of things. So I'll leave it at that, and I guess I'm getting a nod, so I will bring that up in notices of motion. So any other comments, municipal updates? Councillor Austin.
Yes, the Mayor French, thank you. I wanted to add that I believe that sometime in the near future, there should be a press release coming out from the Simcoe County Board of Education with regards to the delay in the construction of the addition to Elmville District High School. So just letting everyone know that that is coming. I'm not sure if anyone else has any further information to that.
I don't think do we have any official information from anyone? I don't think so. And looking at the CEO nodding his head. And I saw some mention of it actually in the Springwater News, which is kind of interesting because we haven't got any official status update. Okay. Well, actually now it seems to be public somewhat in the, Councillor Ritchie, if you want to comment on that.
Other than that, they've been pretty quiet, but I believe Councillor Austin said there's going to be something coming out. I want to comment about the flowers this year on the main street. Of course, you know, they're past their prime now, but the kids, whoever did it, did a great job, and they looked very nice this summer. We had a lot of tourists on the main street. You know, Elmville's, we're like the center of the donut. People come up, they go to we got the liquor store, the beer store, the grocery store, get all their stuff to go out to the cottage. And there's just a little beehive there, but the flowers, I had lots of compliments there, so I want to mention that, mention to the staff, they did a great job. Thanks.
Thank you. So anything else on a municipal basis? Okay. Then we'll move on to notices of motion, and so I'll flip the chair to Deputy Mayor Allen. Okay, very quickly. Actually, before we do mine, can I, okay, Councillor McConkey, as a matter of fact, you can take over, the one I was suggesting, and both can come from you.
Oh, okay.
So we'll start with Councillor McConkey.
This one is a result of the community getting together and having a fundraiser, and I guess there's a little bit of worry out there with the township taking over managing the hall boards and also the funding in that. So, you know, when you work hard and people are donating, they're donating because, like we did donations only, and they're donating because they want that to go to further enhance Grenfell. So right now, I just have a notice of motion that I have that all funding in community halls be directed towards the community halls where the money was raised. Community halls with debt will be funded by the municipality. In 2018, set a policy on how funding from rentals, fundraisers, and halls will be handled, as well as debt. The policy must be reviewed by all hall boards and council prior to adoption. Any funding raised prior to adoption of the policy will be grandfathered to the community halls who raised the funding. So that the funding that they know about that's in their accounts right now, it stays with that community hall. We as municipality will deal with any debt that we had at the different municipalities. Somehow we'll have to determine where that will come from. And then we write a policy that everyone understands, like I know we do rentals and stuff, and so where does that rental money? But fundraising is actually something quite different, and everybody also has to understand from the community hall boards how it's handled, and I don't think we've communicated that, and there's a fear out there, so I just wanted to have a motion so that everyone is at ease, that they don't have to hide that money that we've just raised, you know, and because we need that as seed money to do our next fundraiser. Like, we raised about $1,000, and that would really help to keep the momentum going, and that's the funding then that we would go with. So that's the notice of motion, and I'm just, I guess it will come next time for a seconder, right?
And maybe when the specific motion comes and seconded that, so basically, are you kind of requesting a specific kind of report back for staff to really understand where the funding is allocated, that's identified for specific projects?
If it's different, because the understanding is right now that what the community halls have in their funding allocation after 2017, so if Grenfell had 1,200 or 1,300 at the end of their balance, they still want that money, but their understanding is that they may lose that money. And it's a clean slate. Same as Midhurst has done a lot of fundraising for their pavilion. Actually, I bet you from what they've raised, they can probably pay for their pavilion. So, with the amount that they need. So, and they too, they go out and they have got people to donate because they said it was for the community pavilion and for that to be lost. So that's the thought process out in the community. So if it's different than that, like if staff says, no, what I'm doing as a motion is not what's going to proceed, then I basically want this to happen, and I don't need a staff report. I want the money kept in the community halls until a policy, there's been no report come forward to tell us otherwise. So this needs to be done, and then I said a report has to come forward. So we're grandfathered with all our money right now.
And maybe just for clarity for Director Schmidt, my recollection of the way the halls worked, basically operationally, it kind of went along year by year. Any identified projects such as Midhurst Pavilion, where we say, okay, the Midhurst Pavilion, we're doing fundraising specific for that, it goes into that account. But all other operational accounts, my understanding was at the end of each year, it basically started over again, kind of. And maybe to start with, because you have a motion to make sure we don't have a conflict when it comes back for the specific emotion, can you kind of provide any comment, Director Schmidt, on the motion notice of motion that's coming forward? And I know we're not supposed to discuss the notice of motion. Yeah, so maybe I have to leave it at that but I can, I guess, ask for clarification of your understanding of funds that stayed in accounts, previous kind of accounting policies, without talking about her motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To clarify, funds that are raised for a fundraising event and/or for a specific project are still available for that project and/or event. The issue, I guess, is that at the end of 2016, we report on through our consolidated financial statements where each community hall stands, whether it be a surplus or deficit. Within those funds are fundraising monies, if you will. So what we have to do is we have to dissect, if you will, the numbers for each community hall and determine how much funds for each community hall will go back to each of those community halls for their fundraising and or other events that they've raised money for. And then there may be other funds that have been generated through facility rentals, which is to pay for the operation of that facility. So that information still has to be dissected, if you will, and brought forward to council for council to determine, do they agree with the allocation that staff is proposing for each community hall or not?
Okay, so so since we can't discuss and I'm getting the clerk giving me the cut discussion, so we can't discuss the notice of motion, but we may have healthy discussion added at the next meeting when it's tabled. Okay, thank you. And do you want to, okay,
Just a question, for that motion to be reviewed, we need some factual information though from staff, right?
I think we'll have to discuss it because the motion is tabled. It may result in another being deferred. It very well could, but we won't discuss that tonight. Now, would you care to table the motion that I was going to table? Why don't you do it? Because you're the area councilor and I know you've got lots of concerns expressed to you.
Okay, so I would like to table a motion that the speed limit from Grenfell Road to the new intersection be reduced to 60 kilometers as requested by the residents and the concerns of the residents, and also because it is a community. And this isn't the motion, but basically not Center Vespera, but on George Johnson Road, there's homes on each side. That's been reduced to 60, and I got pulled over there for speeding many years ago after it went down to 60, and it's easy to go faster going down that hill, same as at Grenfell, it's got that hill. But I was also told by the police officer that this is a community. Don't you realize you must slow down? Well, I'm proud of Grenfell's community with the Grenfell Hall and that, and I think we have to have a safe community. And so if I'd like to follow through with the motion for the county councilors to take it forward, and if they need support from the residents, I can get that.
So anyway, yeah, so the notice of motion is to reduce the speed from just east of Grenfell Road to the junction of County Road. Okay, so that'll be the motion you will table. Okay. Any other notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. Any items for future consideration? Councilor McConkey.
Future consideration would be to have a discussion on our website by council, maybe like a training or a walkthrough. And another one for future considerations is I think that we need also a discussion on a new residence package. What we need to put together when a new resident moves into Springwater. I think we need to create a package and discuss that.
Director Schmidt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councilor McConkey. Funny you should say that. A few of us on staff actually had a conversation earlier this week about that particular item. And so I've tasked a couple of individuals to prepare something, and we can bring something forward to council for your approval, if you will. But also we are trying to reach out to the county as well to try to, if you will, for lack of a better term, tag team with them, because there is information from the county that should be supplied to new residents as well. But we want to be careful about how we communicate that information, because right now we already have difficulties where people will call, assuming we're responsible for garbage and so on and so forth. So we're trying to be cautious about how we go ahead and deliver that information.
Yes, Councillor McConkey?
Maybe in that, we can have like a racy chart, who's accountable and who's responsible for each of the services. The other thing I was thinking too just came to mind, what I get a lot of questions on, and it's new residents, is the way we, and I know we're looking at our water billing, but like a workflow of what happens, like they don't even know how we estimate when a new resident moves in, how is that estimation done and stuff. So some like the detail and some don't, but I think as a counselor, and if we all have the same information, then it doesn't get misinterpreted either out there.
No, and I think if they're working on a welcome package, when it comes back and we say, can you add these items and that, that's probably the best way of doing it. Okay, any other items for future consideration? Okay, good input. So can move on to the confirmation bylaw. Can I have a mover and seconder? Austin, Hannah? That bylaw 2017-066 to confirm and adopt the proceedings of council of the regular meeting held on September 6, 2017, listed here and be signed and sealed by the mayor and clerk. All those in favor? Carried. And adjournment bylaw. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Richie, Allen. That the regular meeting of the Township of Springfield is now adjourned at 9:27 p.m. to meet again in a regular meeting on September 20th, 2017 at 6:30 p.m. in the Council Chambers Administrative Center, Minnesing. All those in favor? Carried. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, Council. Lots of good input, lots of good discussion. And anybody that's watching us home, thank you for sticking with us, and invite you to come out and join us in the gallery.